talk. Talkity
Still
talk.
talk. I can't talk like that. Talk the talk.
I know.
Yeah, I like Milan.
You like being what?
I like Milan. I spent a lot of time in Milan.
Milan.
Oh, yes. It's beautiful.
You should go to the Lavazza flagship. It's really nice.
Love it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, we're live.
We're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lost Suitcases, Souls Driven by Wanderlust. As you can see today, I'm joined not by one, but by two beautiful people. We have a special week this week because Amanda, who is the creator of BellaV TV and owns the Bella Vista Cafe, it is her birthday week, and we are doing Where I'm From, and she is from Alameda. And so all the guests this week have a special connection to Amanda, and no exception with my show right now. This is Jason Michael Paul, and I find that Jason is a very difficult person to try to define, but today we're going to be talking about some of his travel exploits, and he has a very, very interesting story, interesting background, especially doing these amazing symphonies, which hopefully you're going to tell us all about. Probably, I don't know, for me, one of the most interesting was from Nintendo's Legend of Zelda Symphony of the Goddesses, and stories about coffee, good stuff. So it's really, really great. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Valerie.
This is great. So, Jason, I don't know how you want to start us off, but your background is really quite unique. So where would you like to go first?
Well, I don't know. I think, well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I started my journey in Alameda, which is where Amanda and I are both from. And I think kind of our upbringings speak very much of diversity. We're less than 10 minutes away by bridge to San Francisco. So, I think that kind of being in such a melting pot always opened my eyes to travel. So it just inspired me, and I've been fortunate enough to where all my professions that I've chosen to go into, they've been afforded me the opportunity to travel, and what can I say? I've been blessed. I've worked with worldwide artists such as Luciano Pavarotti, who is no stranger to some of the world sites. He performed everywhere from Chichen Itza in Mexico to Hyde Park to Central Park and Eiffel Tower. And I've been fortunate enough and privileged enough to be a part of some of those experiences. So.
Wow. But also I wanted to know, when did you guys meet? How long have you known each other?
Well, I've known Amanda. I'm the same year as her sister, and Mike, her brother, is the same year as my sister. And so Alameda is a very tight-knit group, and her father, Vic Gerson, was one of our baseball coaches, and he was heavily involved in baseball in Alameda. And so you couldn't help but not know Mr. Gerson.
Where is he? He was in the background a second ago. Where'd he go?
He'll probably pop down. I'm sure he will.
Okay.
I want to say we met, grade school, because JP, St. Joe's was also the connection. And I always thought my first job was teaching dance, but finally I realized that my first job was working the scoreboard during the basketball games, the grammar school basketball games on Saturdays and Sundays I think I made $5 a game. Yeah. And so your dad was also a coach, right? For basketball. So let's go. We're going back 30 plus years.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, sometime it's your birthday. You don't have to get specific. That's awesome.
Oh wow, yeah. She's only a year younger than me, so we're just spring chickens.
Oh yeah, for sure. So your background, Jason, is kind of interesting, and you realized at a fairly young age, it sounds like, that like travel, although it was originally based in like sports, right? And that's how you kind of like, when did you start to see like how big the world really is, and that you wanted to see more of it?
My parents are just amazing. They've been great to me. And my first travel abroad was when I was 16. My dad he's the type of person that there was no obstacles for his son, you know. And so my dad, he's an investigator, you know. He's always seeking out opportunities for me to see if he can try to help me, put me in a position to do great things, right? So my dad found this one baseball team. It was called the Ambassadors, and they had a tryout in San Jose at the San Jose Giants facility. And of course, I tried out and I made it. And of course, you had to pay to play, but at the same time, it went. You know, you still had to go through it was kind of like a junior Olympics team, you know, and it was made up of people all from even Canada. And they had a bunch of basically teams that they were creating for different age groups, and we traveled. So of course, I went to China and Japan with this team.
Awesome. Oh, that's
and
great.
that was 16 years old. I always remember it. And that was really what opened my eyes to the world. And you know, Great Wall of China, you know, seeing Tokyo, and it was boom, you know. And then of course, coming back to the States, and of course I flew into LAX, and then we went to Disneyland, you know, and just kind of having all these realities, these various realities. Of course, Disneyland is the postmodern reality, right? But you know, so it was those are just some of the tip of the iceberg, you know.
Yeah, what's interesting, Jason, is my first big international travel was at 12, and it was Japan as well for
No, I
dance.
remember. I was jealous. I didn't go on that trip, and I should have gone on that trip.
Yeah, and it was just I think what's so wonderful is when you go for your first time internationally to a culture that is just so different than the one you've grown up in, because it pushed me right away to be much more open to other cultures and ways of doing things. So I wonder if that was the same for you. Instead of like going to a European country where it's not that different, you went all the way to Asia.
I think that at that young age, you know, I felt pretty mature. And one of the things I will say is I felt like at such a young age, being able to kind of understand, like putting yourself in someone else's shoes, like being in another foreign land and not knowing the language or having a different color of skin, you know, you can kind of have some perspective, right? And I think that's what shaped me into the man that I am today. You know, I don't really know how to describe it, but I've just always been the type of person that if I'm gonna try to relate to people, I want to try to become, or at least have a deep understanding of what that person really is potentially going through. You know what I mean? And I think that was what really prepared me for when, as an adult, and I was trying to work in Japan, because I didn't take the route of like most people, which they go over there to teach.
Right.
Like I went over there as a professional, and I was already in an industry, and I was able to do. I'm just an opportunist. I was basically able to use my music to kind of parlay into another skill set, which is kind of my generation, right? Which is video games, and I was able to kind of take those two skills and kind of create a hybrid. And so just being able to kind of, you know, it's like recently I was having a conversation with someone, and it was Jacob Battersby, another fellow Alamedan, one of my best friends. And he traveled all over the world with me, by the way. He used to work for me. And we were talking about, I was telling him how, you know, he was trying to, you know, he tries to tell me, and you know, and I'm already ahead of you, man. I'm already thinking that way. Like I can tell you right now, the other day I was thinking, what if I was a black man driving through a neighborhood with a white girlfriend, you know, and I had just left her parents' house, and I'm in a white neighborhood and I get pulled over by a cop. What does it feel like to have, you know, like I'm putting myself in that place of mind so that I can actually understand better what may be happening in the world, you know. And I think it's all kind of relative. So anyways.
No, I definitely think that those of us who have been privileged to travel and have those kind of experiences are much better capable um, to sort of process what's going on right now. And it makes it a little bit easier to try to understand the complexity of everything that's going on. And if you've been to a place where, so I am obviously a white woman, I am privileged, but I have had the experience of being in a completely different place where when I, as a white woman, walk into a room, everybody stops and stares and points and asks and wants to, you know, why are you here? And what are you doing here? And we don't want you here. And that feeling that I've had, that's an important feeling, I think, for humans to experience, regardless of who you are, where you come from, what your skin color is. It's really important. And it really, like, that experience just drove it home for me that for so many people, that is their day-to-day life. And, you know, travel, last week we were talking about study abroad. You both brought up your travel experiences. I also went abroad for the first time at 16. And it kind of blows your mind. You're like, oh, you know, the world is a huge place and it is very complicated and there are no easy answers. But to try and understand each other, you know, like you said, Jason, you know, to try and see what is it like in someone else's shoes, I think that's the key. And education and talking, you know, I'm certainly now, I think we all are, you know, I'm trying to educate myself, I'm trying to read and better understand, you know, it's such a pivot point right now.
Right.
But going back to Japan, it's funny you guys mentioned it because actually my husband and I were in Japan a year ago now.
Oh, wow.
And he and I both have this very strong affinity for Japanese culture. It's just everything, the art and the food and the everything. But what I want to know is, how did you manage to do something that is so unique? Like, it seems to me, you know, you didn't go over to a completely foreign country and fit yourself and your skill set into a particular job, which already is hard enough.
Right.
But you did something totally new. And
Yeah.
how did you do that? I mean, first of all, do you speak Japanese? How did that happen? And can you kind of take us through that?
Yeah, so I had an amazing partner 4 years. She was just an amazing woman that was deeply connected um, to Japanese culture. She was Japanese American, but her parents were Japanese, and they lived in Tokyo, and they also lived in Torrance, California, and she just taught me everything. And I was just so motivated by her that I did it on my own. So I started going to school. I just was challenging myself. My brain was on fire, you know, and I was, of course, whatever I was learning, I was able to speak at home, and it just caught on, like, and it was just like, it was amazing. And I just got the fever, you know.
You were in love.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I'm the type of person that when I find a stroke, I just kind of I just go with it. And that inspired me. We unfortunately didn't we ended up breaking up, but that wasn't before she already kind of left me with a further yearning to want to and then it just so happened that time when we were breaking up, that I had created this concept, and she was very much responsible for it, because she was obviously my relationship was with her, but she was also my client. So that was kind of but it didn't stop that, and it still enabled this thing to happen, and it was a beautiful thing, whatever. Professionally it was, and it was the first of its kind. And it just so happened that as I was doing this show, Pavarotti, I was working with Pavarotti as well. So I was just kind of growing my own company. And I was this freelance production manager, executive producer for corporate clients in the video game industry. And so, and then that was when we were splitting, is after I had this show that I created for them and their company. It's the first ever video game music concert. And I was doing Pavarotti's farewell tour in Japan.
Dang.
Yeah, it just like,
Okay.
so you know what I'm saying about all these things just kind of being in the right place at the right time. And so that was it. You know, I had instant credibility with the Japanese clients who I had just worked with. So they pretty much gave me a license to take that show on the road.
Now, which show was that? What
It
was
a Dear Friends Music from Final Fantasy concert.
Okay.
It was a Final Fantasy is probably one of the most famous video game music catalogs of any franchise.
Got it.
So
this is this is leading up to Legend of Zelda.
Exactly.
So you did Final Fantasy, then was it Legend of Zelda, then Legend of Zelda Symphony?
No, it wasn't Final. It was Final Fantasy, and then I created another show that I did a recording with in LA. And then I created another show that was basically a catalog of video games with the music and the visuals, and then I just kind of dubbed it like Play a Video Game Symphony.
Okay.
And then I've done different iterations of that concert, but it hasn't really caught on like Zelda or Final Fantasy.
Okay.
It didn't have quite the success that I was hoping for, but it still had pretty decent success. I got a recording out of it, and you know, it's just hard. It's hard to compete with Nintendo and Final Fantasy but so anyways, it wasn't until the 25th anniversary that Nintendo approached me to do some work with The Legend of Zelda.
Got it.
Commemoration of the 25th anniversary, and we had this whole like big press event that we did, and it was at that point that we announced a 25th anniversary recording that was going to be a bundle item with a new game. Yeah.
That's
we go.
right, but I mean,
so that was the beginning of 400 shows all over the world.
That's it. 400.
Yeah.
400 shows.
Yeah, with one show, but 4 different iterations.
Wow.
Wait. What does that mean? Four different iterations, meaning that.
So just
for some reason, when you say that, it reminds me of the choose your own ending kind of a thing.
Well, that's kind of it's kind of like that. But what happened was like for the original, The Legend of Zelda Symphony of the Goddesses, we had different iterations. So like for example, Master Quest, Second Quest, which was the second iteration, and then so that's how we did it.
I see.
Yeah. I think it's so cool.
Wow.
I know. Then we got to see each other a few times. Well, my parents.
I saw you at the show in San Diego. You came to the show in San Diego.
Yeah. So Leo and I came to the show in San Diego, and then we went another time. But what was really cool and what my parents always talked about is your concept brought people to the symphony that probably would never have attended the symphony, right? So you were reaching into this total other segment of the population and bringing them to the theater, right? And then also it was hitting all the different generations. My dad, he's like, oh, this is so cool, like I'm going, and it's me, and it's my son, and it's my granddaughter, and you go in the crowd and you see all these different ages. And your symphony, right? And what you created was the common denominator that brought these people together out of the home, off the screen on the home, and out to the theater, right? As a family. So
I've been saying that narrative is something that I've been saying since 2004. And honestly, I can tell you right now, having worked with Luciano Pavarotti and the Three Tenors, I remember being in Mexico. No, I was in Costa Rica. I was in San Jose, Costa Rica at a stadium. and we had just got this brand new sound system. It came through Guatemala. It was trucked, and I remember I worked with this guy named John Pello. Look him up. He's the most famous sound engineer. He produced the three tenors at Dodger Stadium, and he's the guy. Anyways, we had this amazing sound system, and I always remember because John did the first Dear Friends Music from Final Fantasy concert at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, which was the first major recording at the Walt Disney Concert Hall in LA.
Wow,
and we never got to release it though because the Los Angeles Philharmonic wanted like $400,000. I don't think so. So anyways, but so I was in this stadium in Costa Rica in San Jose, and I had a Final Fantasy album. And I just remember we put it in that sound system, this brand new Meyer sound system. And if you're familiar with music or sound, Meyer is one of the most famous, and he's out of Berkeley. So like the Grateful Dead, he was the guy responsible for the Sound of Wall, or the Wall of Sound, sorry. Anyways, so just imagine the most famous video game probably theme ever is this theme called One Winged Angel, and it sounds kind of like Carmina Burana. Okay, do 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 do. Anyways, and I just was pumping it through this sound system, and that's where I got a crescendo in my head, and the light went off. And I came back, and that's when I pitched this idea, and they bid off on it, and that the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow. So that's when you.
But my point is that my idea was to, just like my mentor and the promoter who actually created Luciano and the Three Tenors, his goal from day one was to bring opera to the masses. When I was doing this in 2003 and 2004, my vision was to bring video game music to the masses. And I don't really talk about this. I've never really talked about this, but these are the things this was the process that was going on, is how can I blow this thing up? Kind of the way that, like I told you, Tibor Rudis, the promoter that created Luciano and the Three Tenors, he created those two guys. Right. He was the first guy to in Atlantic City. He basically got a tent. He took the risk because he was promoting shows in Atlantic City. He got a tent, and they sold out $500 tickets to all these bigwigs in Atlantic City, New Jersey. It sold out so quick. He's like, oh, I'm going to make the tent bigger. Next thing you know, he had that tent, 10,000 people, and he hired like the New Jersey Symphony, and that was it. Next thing you know, Pavarotti's doing arenas and stadiums.
So what was it like, and I love that you're talking about like you had a vision and you just went for it. I think sometimes when you're a visionary, people think you're kind of like borderline crazy. But correct me if I'm wrong. I know when I have visions, you just feel it in your gut.
Yeah.
And
no,
then
I've had it. I've had it many times. But yeah, I've also had misfires too. And
that's part of being an entrepreneur.
Well, I had a misfire recently with National Geographic. So
okay.
that was I had the same I had with my other projects that I thought I was gonna achieve with National Geographic. But I realized a good lesson, the most valuable lesson. And that's probably the reason why I've always had a coffee shop, because it's my own brand. I don't have to get a license from somebody to have my own brand. I can do whatever the hell I want. And if I'm successful, I very well could be the licensor, licensing out my own name and my own brand. So what I try to teach younger people that are entrepreneurial and they're getting into entertainment and they're thinking about licensing IPs and things like that, focus on creating something that's original. Focus on something that you own outright, that you don't have to get the rights from anybody.
Okay.
But it's not always like that. And also I'm still pursuing licenses myself. So, you know, but you know, I mean, it's good to have a kind of a combination of the both. You just want to be able to control things, you know, that's the reality. Like my example with National Geographic, I thought that because National Geographic has 1 billion followers on Instagram, that I'm going to be able to advertise my concert. Not quite. It doesn't work like that. In fact, the way National Geographic works is you have to go through their agency and you have to buy the advertising. Nothing's for free.
Wow. And so this is when you did Symphony of Our World, which was amazing. We went, I mean, I flew up with my niece, went to the opening. It was, I don't know how many times I cried. We all know I'm a crybaby, but it was so touching. And Valerie, you know, Valerie, when she's not on this platform, BellaV TV, she's Penguin Professor. So she's traveled the world through the lens of science and culture.
Yeah,
this
no.
is beautiful.
I could imagine. You said that you had a physicist on the show recently, Valerie?
Yes. Yes.
I was going to ask you, I had a question for you. Do physicists and biologists get along?
Oh, of course.
Okay, cool.
Of course. Well, sure. You know, I mean, there's kind of a pyramid, right? So like the base of the pyramid is mathematics, and that's like the language of the universe. And on top of that, you have physics. And on top of that, you have chemistry. And then biology, we call sort of the apex. So you have to study all of those things underneath in order for biology to make any sense. So yeah,
I studied all those things. So I feel like I had a pretty good, but I will say biology, I had the worst professor I ever had.
Oh, no,
and it ruined it because I had a terrible class. I had a terrible group of kids, and it was just so supportive.
I'm so sorry.
I know.
You know, it's interesting.
You know who it was? Actually, you know who it was? It's actually Jacob Battersby's uncle. It's actually Jacob Battersby's uncle.
I'm gonna step out. Amanda, you know who that is?
Yeah, he's name calling. Well, what you can do is you can watch Valerie's, now you can go on to YouTube and you can watch Valerie's shows. That's what I need to do.
If you want to learn biology, yes, the Penguin Prof channel.
I'll science with partial credit.
My daughter
I'll get you all straightened out.
My daughter's half Japanese too, Valerie. So that's also part of my, that's how much I love Japanese culture, I guess. But you know what's amazing? My daughter's actually studying Japanese too. Nice. And yeah, she's been studying for the last year, and I just re-enrolled her in another class for the summer session, and she's been to Japan 3 times now already.
So cool.
I wonder what it is that is so captivating for so many people. It's just when you're in Japan, it's just like everything, you know, I guess for me, it's the feeling of the culture is so complex. Mm-hmm. I feel like I could spend the rest of my life there and you would barely scratch the surface and you would never really understand what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, and I love that. I love being lost and being challenged in that way. And the first time I was in Japan was before like smartphones and Google Maps and stuff. And I don't think I've ever been so lost. And I had students with me, and I've never been so lost in all my life. And like, it was just, and it was fantastic. And we ended up in a place that, you know, was so off the map, and it was right in the middle of like an annual celebration of local villages. And they had this sort of like floats and things. We had no context to understand anything we were seeing. We found out later, you know, what was going on, but it was just like,
I participated in one of those.
I could be on the moon right now.
I participated in one of those.
Yes.
I used to live in this place called Aoyama, and I was right in the heart of where Motosando Dori is. And I had an apartment there right around the corner. And anyways, they blocked off the main street, and each area so I was one of the guys that was carrying that big old thing on my shoulders.
Did you
It was ripping my shoulders. It was so hard. And I was
cool.
The busiest street in the world in a Motosando. And I was one of those guys. And I just remember, and everyone's drinking. I don't drink. So of course these guys are all crazy and drinking. It's just, finally I was like, man, I can't do this. But I was dressed up in yukata and everything.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So again, part of those experiences are you really like you got kind of you immersed yourself. You were a curious traveler, you know, you can, you know, it's like there's a saying that I always learned, actually, you're always rewarded for your curiosity. You know what I mean? And I believe that. In fact, that's a theater term that I learned at a thing that I went to in New York with Jacob again. But we went to this really cool hotel where they had it was these themes, right? The Elizabethan themes and these Shakespearean themes that were reenacted in a hotel, and you basically
I
go
can see
through all,
you and Jake going to that.
yeah, exactly. But it
Very
gets better. It gets better. You wear a mask and you get separated, and
Ah,
you know what I mean.
You're
And everyone's on their own, you know,
Wow.
like, and
wow.
it's crazy. And you don't even the goal is to not even be with your friends, you know. And again, you are rewarded for your curiosity. So you open drawers, you look at like things, and Jacob actually this guy was he was like, he went to Jacob and asked him if he could grab his balls, and he's like like that. And I have a lot of my best travel buddy is a mutual friend. So, but these are things that happen to him. They never happened to me like that. But
Oh, he's got to
I
call
guess
him
I don't
out.
look like I'm gonna like that too much. Maybe it's he does. I don't know.
I'll make sure to send that clip to my brother. Man, Jason, I mean, I always just had such envy because, you know, Valor is a world traveler. I'm a world traveler, but it's funny. Like, I feel like once you started traveling, it's never enough, right? And so people be like, oh, well, you were in this country, and I'm like, yeah, but then I would get online and I would follow you and your career, and I'm like,
Yeah.
but Jason, you know, he's there. JP's, you know, you were everywhere, like you said, 400 shows. What was the time frame? 400 symphonies. Was that in like 5 years, 10 years? How many years did you bang
That
out?
was
400 shows?
2011 through 2018.
Okay. Wow. And then
That is
like,
such a huge number of, I mean, and it looks to me like the scale of these performances is just like, so what is the traveling like number of people that it takes to put this on? I mean, what?
like the entourage, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, there's a, I mean, I don't, there's various models that we kind of do in the touring industry where, you know, there are instances where you do travel. Like, for example, when we would go on tour in Europe, we would travel with an orchestra.
Okay.
It's just America is and Canada for that matter. It's just not, it's not easy. Unions and musician unions are very strong, and it's very difficult. It's a very expensive type of project. So, anyways, what we typically would do, and domestically, we would usually hire a local orchestra.
Okay, I see.
Or, like, for example, in Florida, maybe we might use the same orchestra in West Palm Beach in Miami, for example. Or in Texas, maybe we might use the same orchestra in Dallas and Fort Worth, or Austin, for example.
Got
It
it.
just
Okay.
depends. It just depends. El Paso,
Okay.
I usually use the same orchestra in Austin and El Paso. You know, I mean, San Antonio, for example.
What were your like, okay, what were your like top 3 globally, and then were there any cities like in the US you're like, man, I just love going back to this city to put on a show?
Yeah.
Where
Oh, I have a
what were
lot of
your
them. I mean, I fully embrace travel. I fully I'm an explorer. I'm an empiricist. So, you know, I live by that mantra: you are rewarded for your curiosity. And those are the things that I feel like if I were to die tomorrow, I would tell you that probably not very many people have been to places I've been. You know what I mean? And I got paid to do what I love, and I got paid to play, you know. And I'm just grateful. I met the love of my life traveling, just randomly, and now she can't get rid of me. So that's the way it rolls.
That's so awesome. That is so awesome. I couldn't agree more. But have you been paid to play in Antarctica?
I have not,
No concerts there yet for the Penguins.
They don't have a lot of flights there. No, but I do want to. That's kind of where I'm at in my life too. Like I'm thinking of places I haven't been that I'm hopeful that I can take a show to. Because I need a good excuse.
Yeah. So I guess.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you have a new show, a new concept that you're working on for a show?
That was what I was going to ask. Yeah.
I do. Actually,
what's
I do.
Next?
I had some projects already in the work. In fact, I had 2 shows booked, one in May and one in June, San Jose and Vancouver, with the Vancouver Symphony for a show that I created called Heroes, a video game symphony.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've done that show many places. It's a great show, but again, it's not like Zelda, it just doesn't have the legs. We can't all be so lucky. But nevertheless, it's still a great show, and just takes a little bit more of you need to kind of pick your markets a little bit more strategic. You need to do it around events that already have a captive audience.
Right. Like what got canceled this summer? Comic-Con.
Yeah,
that's when we would connect at Comic-Con.
Yeah, well, the concert that I had in San Jose was around FanimeCon, so yeah, so that was what it was for. And then the show that I had in Vancouver, which is my favorite city, by the way.
There you go.
And Valerie, if you ever want to go there, I'll give you more recommendations. You'll know what to do with.
I love Vancouver.
Yeah, it's my favorite walking city.
Yep.
You can bike and ride everywhere. And you could even take a ferry.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that got canceled. But no, I've been working before pre-COVID. I was working on a show that I'm pretty much finalized.
Nice.
The deal is almost done, but it's Warner Brothers, and it's Beetlejuice live in concert.
Really?
Yeah.
How fun!
Yeah.
Beetlejuice.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
did you already have
Tim Burton and Danny Elfman score, and I have some special tricks up my sleeve for that one, so I'm really excited.
I want to go.
Yeah.
So you already have cities planned? Let's go.
Yeah, it's gonna be major cities, major markets. It's major orchestras.
Wow.
And then you should your husband will probably know this person, but Ennio Morricone.
Okay.
He's famous for The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. He's one of the most famous composers in the history of film. And I've been working on a project with him for about almost the last year and a half. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be his guy here in the States.
Nice.
And that will be just amazing. I'm working with the family, so but that was just kicking off, like right before, like that. Seriously, the day before, and he just disappeared. Like they just, he's in his early 90s, so he's not messing around.
Yeah.
I just got just so you know, Mia already texted me and said, "Auntie, you have to take me. I told you to the Beetlejuice one." So she loves Beetlejuice. So
yeah,
I do too. It's such an iconic. The music is just so unusual.
Yeah,
that's a brilliant idea.
But see, what the partner that I'm working with, like, and I agree, like, I don't want to just do another film orchestra concert. Like, I want to have like a actor studio with like Michael Keaton, or like where you open it up, you give people a real like insider's like look into the film and the life of these famous, like Alec Baldwin's another character in the movie. Like these are all very, so I've already been talking to the agents. It's a lot of money, but that's the angle that I'm taking with this new project.
Okay.
Because
Very new, fresh, unique.
yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to add my own little kind of touch to things, you know.
And
Wow.
so that's, for me, I know I got to, the pause from, because you also own Coffee Cultures. And I was just going to kind of let people see, you know, when you were talking about a brand, owning a brand, and the importance of owning the rights to something you create gives you more power. When we had to shut down, I think you're still open. Bella Vista had to shut down. And while
Yeah,
I was
I'm
super
open.
well, I
I'm
was super
open. Of course.
frustrated. You
It's
are
me
perfect.
and it's me, and when my girlfriend's not working at her real job, she's helping me out. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been great. It's been great. But you know, one thing I will say is that um I I love the business. I love it. I just San Francisco is not desirable in any shape, form, or fashion. And good thing for me is I already had a new location in the works before pre-COVID, and I was had already agreed on a letter of intent with the owner of a new space in Alameda. So I'm
Oh,
opening Coffee Cultures Alameda in probably September of 2020.
that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
you had to do some pivoting, and like for me, the pause was okay. Now I get to get creative because I don't have the 24/7 of running the restaurant,
Yeah.
right? But it's interesting because you decided like you're going to stay open. You're keeping the wheels on, and it's the two of you like grinding away while your other creative project got put on hold. My goodness.
I've been just really focused. Like for me, I'm super organized right now. I've never been more organized. And as I tell anyone, like for me personally, I needed it. I needed a pause. My business in San Francisco was hemorrhaging poorly, and it was life or death, you know. And you know, this shutdown, the SIP, it allowed me to kind of. I was dizzy. I was on the verge of like, you know, going down, you know, and um
It's a tough
I always
business.
feel like someone's looking over me, you know, honestly. My mom is a very religious woman. She comes from very deep Catholic roots, you know, and I think she prays for me every day or something. Probably my Aunt Sally, because you know, she's. But anyways, I think that that was an intervention
Okay.
because you know, I had lost $30,000 in the first month of in the first 2 months of 2020. So
Yeah.
it was going
I
to continue getting worse.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I
anyways,
agree. I know, I think a lot of people were asking when I connected, like a lot of people shut down their breweries in San Diego and had to walk away from businesses that they'd owned for a decade. And when I said like, how are you? They're like, I'm sad, but they're like, to be honest, I'm kind of relieved, right? So because, you know, that industry, the restaurant industry, it's exhausting and the margins are so small. I think people finally are starting to understand what sacrifice goes in and how tough a business it is. So it has really been a blessing in disguise, I think, for a lot of people to just pause and collect themselves and like you're saying, get organized and then
yeah,
figure it out. Like business wise, but also personal life. Like what's
yeah,
my next chapter going
totally.
to look like?
No, I've always been like that though. My personal life is always a priority. Like I
Mhm.
never ever one thing I will say about my friends in Alameda, growing up in Alameda, we know how to have fun, you know, and we know how to make work fun, you know, and it's like my my girlfriend works harder than anyone I've ever seen, but I need to inject some fun because it's not me. I'm not I like having a coffee shop is not work for me,
Right.
you know, because I can do it all myself. I'm having fun. And that's why I've realized during the SIP is that that's why I got to get out of San Francisco or at least move my location because I'm not having fun. Like it's too much craziness that I'm dealing with that it's just taking from my mind. And you know, I have my hair, but if I keep going, and I'm gonna lose it. But no, so you know, I've been in business in San Francisco since 2006, owning coffee shops.
Wow.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. Yeah.
And I was 28 when I owned my first business in San Francisco.
Wow.
So I'm 43, you know. So I mean, this isn't my first rodeo. But I think what I will say this is before pre-COVID, I had already known what it's like to go without. I went through a period in my life where I live on the coast. I removed myself from the city. I only came into the city when I wanted to be conducting business or I needed to check up on things. You know, I had that, but it was already that pause, you know? And what I'm trying to say is that I was already prepared. I had already kind of felt the worst of it. You know what I mean? So now when this happened, I was already living within my means. I got rid of the Porsche, and I got rid of the Range Rover, and I got rid of the non-necessities, like how the city in the States got rid of the non-essential businesses. You know what I mean? So anyways, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, bringing it back to travel, like Japan is what prepared me for all of this.
Yeah.
So like when you guys were talking about the magic, like Japan is where I didn't have to be on. And I found the opposite. I found a freedom in being unknown, and a freedom in being like, you can't really be incognito when you're a blonde in Japan.
Right.
Of just existing and slowing down. And I really feel if I hadn't had that experience, I would have gone like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs during this shelter in place.
Well, my first coffee shop was born out of hanging out in coffee shops in Japan and internet cafes. In fact, when I used to travel, my first travels over to Japan, I would stay in a hotel and they had a Yahoo Cafe. It was a cafe. It had full service. It was like a Kinko's, but it was a Yahoo Cafe, internet cafe. And this is when it was like dial up. You know, that's how old I am. All right. And so I would go there, and I always remember I used to get my eggs, yokoyaita. It means well done, because I don't like scrambled eggs that are wet. And I would order my little sausages that I used to get because I used to eat pork back then. And I would get my coffee, and I would do my email and stuff like that. And my point is that when I came back, when I kind of was done traveling in Japan and I came back to San Francisco, that's where I had the idea of creating a big internet cafe. And I was one of the first ones. And Wall Street Journal was interviewing me because we had like people starting startups out of our cafes and stuff like that. And anyways.
So cool.
Japan is inspiring a lot in a lot more ways than just, you know, it's that spirit, it's that entrepreneurial spirit, you know, that the work ethic, you know, there's a job for everybody, right? From the guy who's cleaning the subways, the gum off the ground, or the guy who's just walking in the train to make sure that if anyone dropped anything, they were able to, you know, make sure it gets back to the rightful owner, you know, little things like that, you know.
And that the thing that always impresses me is how important everyone's job is and how much pride they take in whatever they do. You know, when you have years of apprenticeship to make rice, you know, for a sushi restaurant. And I mean, you know what I mean? And it's
oh yeah, for sure.
This is
I had a guy that my local, I had, so that's one thing you just touched upon. So that's the one thing that I love about Japan is that, for example, a yakitori is direct translation is a chicken store, or a yakinikuya, it's a barbecue store, or a meat store. You know what I mean? Like, and what I always loved is that person that's all he does, and he's the best damn.
He masters it.
Skewer, turner.
Yes.
Using Japanese coal that if you're doing it right in here, that's why I'm the worst person to go out to Japanese food with, because I'm a snob. I'll just be honest with you. If you're not using Japanese ingredients and you're not Japanese cooking my food at a Japanese restaurant, we're gonna have a hard time, unless you are Korean living in Japan, Korean.
You get a pass.
Japanese.
Then you get a pass. Yeah.
I
think that
I've talked enough. I have to eat. I'm starving.
I was just going to say, we're going to have to close this up because Ask Dr. Cat is coming up next. And I also wanted to, of course, thank you both. This conversation was really, I don't know about anybody else, but I really needed it. And Jason, your story is amazingly inspiring. I love your entrepreneurial spirit. And I hope that when this is all over, that you have nothing but great success with your next projects, because they sound amazing. Beetlejuice, I got to see that.
Great.
And Amanda, my opportunity here to wish you publicly such a very happy birthday. And it's been a rough week, but I really hope
I'll tell you happy birthday in Japanese.
Ah, there you go.
Let's hear it.
Please.
Arigato.
Arigato.
Oh my gosh. Thank you both for a great show. A really quick shout out, just so you guys know, next week on Lost Suitcases, we're going to be having Barry Carlton, who is an amazing photographer. He's also a self-described recovering lawyer, and he's going to be taking us on a journey through Riga, Latvia, which is a place that a lot of us don't know very much about, but it's actually a sister city. Did you know this? For San Diego. And he actually wrote a book about this. He's got amazing stories about our sister cities. So you'll definitely want to be here next week at 6 o'clock to hear all about that and see more amazing photographs. So until then, thank you both so much. And as always, just wishing everyone lots of safety during these difficult times. Keep your suitcases in storage and come back for your virtual travel fix next week. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Valerie.
Sayonara.